Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Arwin and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
I sent you a PayPal and then forgot to tune into your show. I'm sorry, Arwin.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
I thought
Thanks.
it was on my to-do list. I was like, I'll send Arwin a PayPal. Someone sent me money, and I'm like, oh, I'll give Arwin some of it because I know typically because I'm e-begging hard, it's because I'm super poor. It's in the middle of the month, and I always consciously think Arwin's probably really poor now too. So that's the reason. But I did it intentionally to go into your show, say, hey, I've given you PayPal, and then listen to your show in the background. I didn't. I ended up contacting somebody about something that went wrong, which I won't talk about in the live show, but something boring with Entropy. Anyway, did you have a good show, Armin?
Yeah, I had a really interesting show, actually. With Professor Phil Bell in chat constantly. I was just bringing in new technological innovation for satellites, basically, with commercial opportunities. And I really elaborated on it the entire show. And Professor Phil got really uncomfortable over that. I was like constantly making up excuses why it's too expensive, too difficult, and we already have cameras up there. I was like, no, this is different. This is more like a commercial idea. And like, dude, if I be like a executive in some telephone company, I just had to buy a satellite for the telephone services, dude, I would want to have a little camera on my satellite that would be movable, so you could literally look at my own satellite as it is suspended in space, and also be able to pan down and look at the globe Earth live, right? That would be awesome. I would brag to my corporate friends about that, like, oh, check out my satellite, I'm so modern. Like, that would be a business opportunity. So that's what my show was about.
Yeah, it's a shame. Space is fake and you can't visit a second law of thermodynamics violation to view a globe Earth, and everything we have been presented with was ultimately bunk and lies. But if the Narnia area was real, it would be nice to take pictures from there and have a 24-hour Narnia feed. Unfortunately, these areas that don't exist can only be theorised and speculated about in terms of how they would exist if we were to go to them. We can't go to the second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum. So it's a nice fantasy.
Right, but it's also based on the premise that it is all possible. It would be doable, right? It would be actually really cheap, right? It's not like, oh, you have to attach a telescope to every satellite. No, it could just be a really basic camera. It doesn't even have to be super high res, just basic, normal standard res from now. And it would be really cheap to just add that on to any satellite they would be able to launch right now.
Sure, and likewise, I'm saying if you imagine that Narnia is actually real and we can actually go through the wardrobe, we wouldn't have to worry about the logistics of, whether or not the rope's going to suffer the time dilation strains that, if you were going to use a rope to make sure the safety of the people going through was, maintained. You don't have to worry about any of that. Assuming it's true, you could just send them through on a rope and film with maybe slow motion cameras the process of time dilation as you travel through the wardrobe. Obviously, they wouldn't cost a great deal. Just need some slow motion cameras and, you know, access to the wardrobe and, you know, somewhere to be able to televise the propaganda thereafter to convince people that Narnia has actually been visited and we have got time dilation videography. Go ahead, whoever that was.
That sounds fascinating, Nathan.
I just wanted to ask a question since Alwyn had him in chat. What does this guy think that he's actually doing with satellites? Does anybody know?
I didn't see a 3-second gap there. Did you? Shout out to Mike 808 for the super chat. Sends a smiley face. Thank you very much indeed, Mike. Go on. What was your question in seriousness? I was more focused on the jape than I was on the question. Go ahead. What was the question again?
What does he actually think he is doing with satellites, this Phil Bell character guy?
I think he assembles them. He's like a satellite building workshop, you know? He probably knows people that still do that.
He said he tracks them.
On his computer. Sure.
Yeah, I track Pac-Man. You know, Pac-Man and their migration patterns. I track them on my computer. Meanwhile, space is fake. So, yeah, you can't send satellites up to a second law of thermodynamics violation. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
Well, maybe if I had a little camera on my satellite that could look around, I would be able to prove it.
Maybe if I have a slow motion camera going through the wardrobe, I can show the time dilation in this place that doesn't exist. Likewise, space vacuum,
Exactly.
not existent.
Right, you get it, exactly.
I got Jim Baroni and Wen Keeler saying about an electromagnetic field like a fusion reactor that there's gas pressure next to a vacuum, but what's containing the pressure is the electromagnetic field around it. I don't know too much about a reactor and how it works, but that's the topic in Discord right now.
Yeah, the reactor itself is a container, right? So what they're saying is I can create gas pressure without a container by way of container.
Right, but it's also in a vacuum.
Sorry, the vacuum that's created within the container.
Yes.
So to demonstrate gas pressure without a container, they're going to need a reactor, and that reactor would be a, let me get this correct, giant container, correct?
Sounds about right.
So at what stage are we demonstrating gas pressure without a container when we've very definitely got a container to begin this process?
Yeah, there's a lot of wordplay, little semantics. Jim Baroni is telling me that weight is the force, not pressure. So he's mixing up a lot of these words, trying to confuse everybody and get everybody in the gotcha, you know. But
weight is down vectors when talking about liquids and solids in air. The air itself expands in all directions. It doesn't have a simple down vector, 9.8 meters per second. It expands in all directions. Down. Talking of that, righteous. Somebody might be making a visit here, so Dirth has asked us to have a check out of some guy's presentation that he sent me, which I did have a glance over, but I think he's going to be putting his presentation past us.
All right.
If you see if you see anybody that you don't recognise, just say, "Are you that dude?" Or if you're watching and going, "How do I get on?" You just go into the live stream queue if the live stream itself is full, and then we'll move you across. Just so you know, if you're watching. I don't even know what the guy's name is. I'm so sorry, whoever this guy is. He's gone to the trouble of putting together a presentation to actually, you know, garner our time without any chance of interruption while he goes through it. So, smart move, but we'll see how he gets on if he comes at all. But certainly I've had a heads up from DITRH that somebody's chasing Bitcoin or something along those lines.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Chocolate. How goes it?
What's up?
Sky. It's going down.
Yeah, I was waiting for that response. Yep. Sky is usually up. Yep.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Where is the sky in Australia?
Above them? Same as it is for us. It's the same sky.
So if we were on a globe, the sky would be down from America.
Relative to your position, an Australian, or relative to my position, an Australian sky on a globe, when begging the question, would be antipode to my position. So, in technical terms, yes, their sky would be below my feet, antipodal from my positioning, yes. We're not on a globe.
But when I hear if we were on a globe, it kind of sounds like if I was from Krypton, or if I lived in Gotham City, or any bullshit that you can just make up. Because how does reality work on a globe when there is no globe measured, seen, or anything ever, except in cartoons?
Yeah, same as saying
It's
Narnia.
nonsense. Yeah.
If I
but-
say, for the sake of argument, just to link the two together, chocolate, that Narnia is a sphere-shaped planet also. So once you go through the wardrobe, regardless of where you end up in space and time, you're on a planetoid. So spherical surface beneath your feet. Now if I then say, if we are on Narnia, then the horizon distance is 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. If we're in Narnia, because Narnia is a spheroid, it's coincidentally like Venus, assumed to be the same exact parameters as Earth when assumed to be a sphere at 3959 radius. Therefore, if we assume we are in Narnia, then every distance to horizon's no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet in Narnia. So let's all beg the question in the first instance that we are indeed in Narnia, so we can calculate the geometric horizon that we experience, because we are in Narnia now, aren't we? Say it with me. We're in Narnia, aren't we? Yes, we're
No,
in
hold on.
Narnia.
First of all, who came up with that the Earth is the same size as Venus?
Christian Huygens.
Okay, where were all the smart people back then? Where was all the intelligence? How would you let someone get away with that?
Get away with it. He was praised as being genius for doing it.
My point.
It's because you can't go against the church. How's
it was-
my audio? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. He was described as ingenious. Go ahead.
Lately, like when I've been trying to talk, I've been crackling. Well, I updated my software and I just want to know if I'm crackling.
Sound fine to me.
I have a question about that, or I was thinking about what you guys are talking about right now. If the Earth was a sphere, and you went down to the bottom, like if you dip corrected your eyesight to the Earth and looked out with a 0 degree baseline, shouldn't the horizon be lower than 0 degrees if you had a perfectly straight line? I would think that the horizon would, instead of bulging up, it would be dipping down.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ordered a taxi. Your mic's a bit distorted. I could only just make out what you were saying. No, did anybody order a minicab?
Okay, I'm not
No,
going
I
to talk
think
to you
it's
again.
crackling.
No, it's all right, Eric. We heard you. Should it be dipping down? It's part of their argument when they assume angles from a centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. If you were to quiz, and we have, people like Bob the pseudoscience guy on the physical position of his geometric location debunked by the Black Swan, they would indeed assert that it's dipping down below the horizontal, exactly as you would assert in the globe maths. They can't not assert that. They can't go against what they're claiming. They can't acquire the horizontal. It's our debunking of their use of the sextant. What are they pointing that tool at? Well, it's the horizon. Why are they pointing at it? To gain a horizontal baseline. Alrighty then. So your horizontal baseline, if you're pointing at the horizon, is dipping below your position like you're on a sphere. Yeah, that's why the tool doesn't work, Eric. But good point. You sound broke up towards the end. It was fine at the beginning. We got most of it. Hello, who is it that just joined? John, hello. And bye-bye goes John. So yeah, Christian
Can I comment?
teachings. Go ahead, Tent.
Yeah, no, I want to comment, just hopefully it won't deter the conversation, but the claim about the sextant is very short, very sweet, very quick death for the globe. The sextant is an angle measuring instrument. That's number one. That's the claim we're making. Okay. They say they're using it on a curved surface called the Earth. Well, guess what? That negates it right there. You can't get an angle with a curved bottom baseline. That's the argument. It's over right there. We don't have to do any more.
Yeah, spot on. Only evidence of the R value, Earth radius.
It exists in the math.
Didn't you just hear what Tent said?
Yeah, but for them to beg the question of angles being measured from a presupposed centre of a presupposed spherical Earth at radius 3959 to gain their angles to infinite distantly stars and assume that dip angle is only accounting for their geometric drop debunked by the Black Swan, yeah, they're going to need R for that assumption. Yeah, they're transposing angles measured at the surface to the centre, but to the centre of their presupposed spherical Earth that they'll need R for. Any evidence of R? I did hear what he said. I know it's been debunked. Black Swan debunked it. But when they beg the question and try and justify how a sextant will work on a globe, they're still going to need R for that in every instance. That's why these two work well so well together, Black Swan and sextant.
You can't live on a globe without curvature. You got to measure.
What a marriage.
They ain't got any, John, and they haven't got an R value. They can't get one if they haven't got any measured curvature.
Right. It's over.
It is. It is game over. Globe's dead. Died 1st Jan 2020. That was when the coffin was covered over, not last nail, covered over, and everyone departed. That was the end of the funeral. 1st Jan 2020. It was fighting for its life in 2017. You know, everyone was allowed to beg the question, and that was its life support. Assuming R was life support for the globe that was dying. Then someone pulled the plug on R, and the globe died. Now it's buried. 2020, 1st Jan. Black Swan. That's
I
what
think the
buried
globe was
it.
stillborn.
Nah, it's been very much live and kicking for at least 150, probably 200 years at the minimum. Probably maybe a bit longer, maybe 300, 400. We don't know where they fiddled and diddled with the timelines.
You know what I haven't heard in a while is that everyone knows we live on a globe. Haven't heard that in a while.
Appeal to consensus fallacy.
Think they would bring that nonsense here? Is that
Yeah.
even an argument?
I like how Neil says he's not heard it when the majority of the opening show actually was spent discussing electronics and sound. A small percentage of that was actually your son appealing to consensus, Neil. There's so many people in NASA doing this work and that work. That's an appeal to consensus the same. Everybody knows we live on a globe. It's just a diluted version of that same thing your son appealed to. Sorry. So when you say you don't hear that anymore, yeah, you do. You hear it all the time.
I mean, exactly like that. Used to hear that all the time. Well, everyone knows we're on a sphere.
You're going to need R for that.
That's a
Times ever changed.
It's a self-soothing fallacy. They get here and go, idiots, everyone knows we're on a sphere. Because then they don't have to pay it much never mind. And they can get on with their day. It's like, if this is a trap or a rabbit hole that's been covered in branches and leaves, this is you walking along, skirting the edge of the trap, and a leaf or branch cracks beneath one of your feet, but technically you've both feet on steady ground, thinking you're on a globe. That's what I mean metaphorically, being on steady ground in your globe faith. So you hear the snap of one of the twigs and you look down, and you go, oh right, that's a flat earth hole. Ah, we all know we live on a sphere. And then you dodge the trap. And then walk off. So you've seen what it is, noticed that it's flat earth, but you've in no way fallen down the rabbit hole. Just tell yourself that everybody already knows, because you already know. So you don't need to look at the rabbit hole.
Nathan, let me give you an update on the effects of the Black Swan, at least from my perspective. I've been watching and monitoring when I can, and of course, people send me stuff, the rebuttals from the anti-flat earthers and the ballers about the sextant argument. And it's quite interesting. As of this point, I can't find one that has spent any quantity of time saying that the measurement's coming from the center of the earth. Yet all the books pre-assume that. Now, I can only think the reason they don't do that is because they've heard the Black Swan argument. They know if they go there, we're going to request proof of R. So they're not even going there. So they're not even presupposing that in their imagination, the angles of the sextant is coming from the center, because obviously it's never coming from the center because the tool's being used on the surface. But they're not even trying to do it from a transversal or, argument that sun is coming. I haven't even heard that. And that's the only place they can go. They could go and say the sunlight is coming in parallel and the angle is the same as from the center. So they can't even go there because how devastating the Black Swan is.
So, what you're saying is our anti-flat Earth opponents, who are aware at some level that we have an argument called the Black Swan, and it debunks their capabilities of deriving R by way of geometric assertions of the horizon. Upon an understanding of that being gained, our anti-flat Earth opponents won't appeal to angles from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth and light coming in parallel from these infinite distances that can be described and are described in some of the sextant manuals, because they know that we'll just ask for R, the conclusion of the Black Swan, in other words. So when you say they, your they is anti-flat earthers, people who are aware of the argument. These are people who have not just looked at the little trap that's called flat Earth. They've fallen right down the bottom of it, and when they emerge on the other side, they look back up at the big hill that's actually just been, traversed, and they go, God, it's horrible down here. I mean, we're in the same place, but we're looking around going, wow, isn't it beautiful? But they've fallen down that hole, and at that point they're going, you know what? I know that the people down here will ask me for an R value if I start telling them, as I'm trying to climb back up this hole to the top of the hill, that, we can just assume that the angles come from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth when we use a sextant on the surface, as all these people are down here are doing and talking about, and how flat it is when they measure on the surface. I mean, back up there, everyone just laughed along and said, well, we know the angle comes from a presupposed centre when we talk about 1 degree every 69 statute miles, the drop for Polaris, for example. Well, everybody knew that it was coming from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, and you're just twisting it like a giant 360-degree compass. Well, now we're down here and everyone's pointing out that we actually make that angle measurement on the surface with 2 straight lines. That's painful. I'm trying to get back up to the top of this bloody rabbit hole so I can believe that we're on a sphere again and laugh at you people. Like the people up there, I can hear them through the rabbit hole still laughing. Laughing down the hole.
Well, they're going to...
Especially using the straight lines that you spent a year and a half, almost 2 years, telling your opponents that you can't get because everything's refracted all the time, or everywhere, always. It's hilarious. It must hurt, Glovers. That sucks.
It does, Chocolate, and it's been a while now, but I can't help but think that they're really exhausted at this point because of pretending to be on something that they're not. I mean, their God-given senses are telling them every day, we're not spinning, we don't live on the curved surface, water finds its level, and yet they must be exhausted in their mental state because they're in the world of pretending.
Imagine trusting somebody like, I don't know, Bill Nye more than your own senses. Hilarious.
If you're standing under, let's say you have a room in your house and there's a light fixture in the center of the room attached to the ceiling. If you get under that light fixture, that's the zenith position. You're directly under the light. It's directly overhead. You're at 90 degrees to it. Now, if you find a corner of the room that you can walk to, say it's 3.5 steps, 4 steps, you're looking at 9 feet to 12 feet away, normal steps. Your angle to that light is no longer 90 degrees because you walked away from it, but your surface is flat. So now you have an angle to the light. As you walk closer back to the light, it gets closer to 90. If you walk further away, it's going 89, 88. It's going all the way. And that's how sextant works, because it can have a straight baseline and an angle to that light. And when you're underneath it, you're underneath it.
Yeah, you can't measure straight lines for sextant angle measurements on a spherical surface. It does not work. And the old bait and switch to take the angle to the centre without them noticing. You know, Adam pointed this out pretty early on when they started doing it, and nobody's ever looked back since. Yeah, we caught the bait and switch. It was a lot more obvious than the terrestrial refraction bait and switch. And it got caught, it got addressed. Now, silence. What have they got? That's it. I mean, this argument has been done, dealt with, wrapped up in rebuttal, and again, put to bed pretty quickly. Far quicker than the Black Swan. You know, that's it. What you got? Beg the question that the angle came from the centre. Black Swan. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity, what's that?
Down 9.8 meters per second.
No, but you can calculate it
Helium
using,
balloon?
you can calculate it using some mathematics, and then all of a sudden you think that you've got something there called gravity because you made a sum.
Well, if there was
Doesn't,
no
doesn't
gravity,
there have
we'd
to
all
be an
float
it
off the
before you
planet.
can calculate it? What's
Hold
the
on.
No.
Something
No,
not
no,
quite
no.
right here. My wife used this on me. She showed me the maths of vacuuming, how the pressure differential causes the dust to go into the vacuum. She calculated the square footage of the carpet, and then, you know, told me how all of that dust would go in at what rate. She broke it all down for me. And then when I pointed out the vacuum hadn't been done, do you know what she said? She said you can think of it as being done.
Ha!
Did she really? That's hilarious.
Does work the other way as well, Nathan. It works if you can spit them maths back to her. You can then claim that you've done the vacuuming.
No, that's what she was doing. Oh, I see what you're saying. I can take those measurements and claim a force also.
Yeah.
Right.
You can even explain to her how entropy decreased when you did the vacuuming in the mathematics, because you can describe using the Boltzmann equation how the distribution, the probability distribution of the particulates in the carpet will have decreased over time as you were doing the vacuuming in the sums.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm being swindled out of some chores getting done by showing some mathematics of things that don't really exist in physical reality.
And we never said that they actually exist. They
But
just
that's
exist
what I was
in the maths.
told. I was told I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
think of the chores having been done.
Yeah, but if you don't realise that it's a reification fallacy to do that, then you're stupid in the denial or the ignorance that the vacuuming has actually been done. Nobody said the vacuum had actually been done, and nobody would expect it to have been done.
You can, you don't have to work on the really is chore level.
It's going to work on parrots all over the place.
Yeah, I was told to imagine the vacuuming had been done and it was all clear. And when I pointed out that it isn't, I was told, well, in this example, when I'm explaining how the vacuuming works and the pressure differential that was sucking up the particulates of matter into the bag, that I didn't need to think of it on the really is level. That's what I was told. And I'm like, I just want the vacuuming done. The maths is irrelevant, right?
Did you get the 800 watt vacuum, or did you get the bigger, more powerful 1000 watt vacuum?
I got the 1,000, and that was justified. And in terms of the economic value of that power difference, that all got explained in the process when I was asking about why the vacuuming hadn't been done. So I know all about the power differential and the economics of scale in terms of how much quicker it'll be with a powerful motor to do the vacuuming that's been done. obviously we're not
No,
working at the really is level.
There was a recent study that said that the 800-watt vacuum was actually more efficient because it uses less power, and the suction is negligibly different. So it's actually better value for money to get the 800-watt one, you know.
This one
Hold
of
on a
those.
second.
Hold on, I've seen these advertised. Is this one of those ones that works on the time dilation principles?
Yeah, it works on and the flux capacitor. It's got a different flux capacitor.
I see. It's crossed franchises from Narnia to Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. It would be harder to fake the mathematics of doing the vacuuming than to just do the vacuuming. So obviously she did the vacuuming.
She said that too. That's right. That's exactly how she phrased it too. Doing all this maths for the electricity consumption that was definitely used when doing the vacuuming at the not really is level was far more complex than just doing it. So obviously it's been done, because why would you do the maths?
Thing is, if we can start an internal ruckus with some element of the mechanics of the motor, how powerful it is, or the suction technique that it uses, people will get lost in the fact that we're arguing over Narnia, and they'll think that we're actually arguing about the credibility of the argument that the 800-watt machine is a little bit more efficient than the 1,000-watt machine, completely missing the point that it's all nonsense in the first place.
Yes, it's more about the differential in pressure, because vacuums don't actually suck. What's actually happening is the pressure that has a differential by you evacuating the vacuum means that the outside pressure forces the dust by way of a breeze into the vacuum as it replaces the differential. So obviously you don't understand how vacuums work. You know, the fact that this argument now dilutes and segues away from whether or not the vacuuming's been done is irrelevant. You just don't understand how vacuums work, Anthony.
Nathan, come on. The battery was at full charge a day ago. It's at half a charge now. It had to be done.
Yeah. And now if you're in the audience and you're listening and you didn't keep up with that conversation and the way it flowed, then you don't realize that the tactics that they play, we were demonstrating real world for you on the ad hoc, like, you know, flipping it off the tip of our tongue. But if you did follow that, you understand the tactics that they use. So well done if you kept up with it.
And if no, you now pointing out that I'm using tactics is just you not understanding how a vacuum works and trying to move away from that fact. It's just because you're an idiot and you've lost.
I was going to say,
There's another tactic.
Yeah, I was going to say you forgot to call me an idiot.
We can, we do, we must think of the vacuuming being done. It doesn't mean it really is, but we don't have to work at the really is level.
I feel much better now.
God.
Thanks.
So after all this, where does somebody claim victory? Because we've forgotten that bit. We've got to claim victory somewhere.
No, so long as the audience has missed the point, not realised that the debunk still stands and hasn't been refuted, then the convolution of the argument leaves the audience not realising what they've missed. I'll give it,
which is basically what happened, which is a textbook example of what
just about
to
to
Rachel 5 zeros.
Oh,
and
no.
Fight the Flat Earth.
Go ahead. I was going to give a different example. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rachel 5 zeros managed to get them in the corner, and she was trading blows with them, and they just didn't like the fact that she was trading blows with them, and rumpus the death out of the conversation to stop her from getting the devastating blows out, which was in her example. Where did Blue Marble Science get the acceleration from if he hasn't got a force to do it? And they couldn't have their audience hearing that, so they basically battered her with verbal attack and called her all sorts of names to try and ridicule and humiliate her. And she stuck to her guns, but she couldn't get... It's basically rumpusing. They rumpused her as the guest. That's what happened.
I was going to give a little rendition of Hank Hill versus Zeisis, I believe. And in debate, he made a really good point about the inverse square law with stars and their measurements. It was entirely ignored. 40 to 60 minutes later, I kid you not, the discussion had long since ended, moved on to a different subject, and then got brought back on by the original person who'd been challenged, Zeisis in this example. Now, Hank Hill had then left the hangout, but a concession was given in terms of his point in regards to the inverse square law and how it debunked the point, but it wasn't attached to the original devastating question, and there was a prolonged period of time in between, and the opponent wasn't there to say, "Ha! That was my point!" So that didn't happen. Now, after the fact, Anthony got in touch with me and was like, "Here's a section of your show. Here's another section of your show 40 minutes later, and here's a gaggle screw of nonsense in between. Now, if I put this beginning bit with this end bit, it's devastating. He's won when he asked the question. It's conceded that he's won 40 minutes later. These two were left so far apart intentionally as a tactic by the opponent. Anthony then said, "You must take charge." At the time, I was far more lenient, very similar to some of the other shows that are out there, other debate shows are available. I took a similar approach, and Anthony was like, "No, we are in the minority. There is no reason why you should allow this to happen." I went, "Okay." From that day to this, I've not allowed it to happen.
There was another really good example. It was with, what's his name? Brandon Toy. He spotted that Rumpus was basically, Rumpus was doing something naughty. He was rumpusing the hangout to stop Brandon Toy realizing that GeoStreamer was reifying mathematics, or reifying a graph in this instance, into existence as a claim for evidence that the Etvos effect existed. And it was a four-axis graph. There was a nice curve to it. And Brandon realized that he was reifying. He said, like, "Where did you get the data from this from?" And he said it was from a model. And he was just about to say that the use of the model to make the prediction for the graph to exist in the first place is reification. There's no actual evidence for the graph being created. And because Rumpus knew that that was what was coming out of his mouth next, Rumpus took a tactical foul, got ejected from the hangout. GeoStreamer thought he was being a fair moderator by kicking him out. Meanwhile, I spotted that this was literally a sabotage attack to stop Brandon from telling everybody that GeoStreamer was reifying. Another example of tactics.
Right, indeed.
That's all they got are tactics. Literally all they got.
Well, if you guys would quit pointing out that the vacuuming isn't being done, then the vacuuming would be thought of as being done, and we wouldn't have any problems here.
Or more correctly saying it would be to... The vacuuming issue has been forgotten about if we discuss Anthony's cognition and understanding about differential pressures versus vacuum sucking. Once that's been discussed for a prolonged period of time, the issue of vacuuming itself gets forgotten.
Which is exactly what Professor Phil Bell's doing in chat right now when he's asking the question, well, if you go up to 50 miles, it's practically a vacuum at that height. So why is it not, he argues then you can have gas pressure existing next to a vacuum, fundamentally missing the point that you can't have the pressure created in the first place because you need something that's going to increase or decrease entropy and increase energy. And the reality is there's nothing to stop it from all exhausting like the gases out of a car, because the moment the gases are created in a car, out the back they go. It's the same thing with the Earth, and a bottle of pop proves it.
Yep. Go get a Pepsi and debunk your whole model. Hilarious.
I put a pop bottle on one of the live shows after we discussed this. Somebody had called you out on it as being nonsense. And I was like, it's just an entropy example. What's the issue? Why would this be any more or less valid than any other demonstration of hot to cold or high pressure to low pressure? Pop bottle, yeah, absolutely sound. Why is that an issue? Now, I didn't actually get an answer, but I did stick it on a thumbnail with, I think it was Mountain Shouting and Dr. Bob. Those are the bottles. They're obviously rip-off of main brands. But I just thought it was quite funny, Dr. Bob and Mountain Shouting.
That's your synchronicity, Neil.
Correct.
I didn't see them, Nathan. I couldn't believe the Dr. Bob one. But then to have a Mountain Shouting, which is what they've been doing at us for a while. Mountains do shout at us and point out the very flat nature, which we dwell atop. Yeah, I thought that was really... was it you that found that picture 10th? Or something?
Yeah, I think it was 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
It sort of came across my computer.
Of all the net, like Dr. Bob, it's nothing like Dr. Pepper. So why pick Dr. Bob? I don't know. It just started... Yeah.
Isn't it Pibb? Dr. Pibb or something like that in the States? We don't have that here. Do you guys have Dr. Pibb?
It's called Mr.
Dr.
Pibbs.
Pepper.
Mr. Pibb.
Dr. Pepper in the northern states, and if you go down south, you get Mr. Pibbs, which is a takeoff of Dr. Pepper.
It's a spin-off of both. You end up with Dr. Bib or Dr. Bob would sound better. So that's what we've done. Anyway,
You can think of it as Dr. Pepper.
Damn, you got there quicker than I did. Mountain Dew, yeah. Whether or not you get called a counterfeiter is, at least in England, based on the standard of would an idiot in a hurry mistake it for the original brand. So if you've got, instead of Pepsi, you've got Pepsi with a very similar logo. If an idiot in a hurry would just chuck his money on the counter and grab it, thinking it was Pepsi, then you've got a counterfeit. So, you know, you've got to skirt the lines when you're counterfeiting Mountain Dew. Well, to me, Mountain Shouting, is it close enough? Right on the edge, isn't it? I love it. Some counterfeiter somewhere's gone, we've got to get it close enough for people to want to buy it, but not close enough that if in court we couldn't give plausible deniability that we definitely didn't do that.
Audis are the masters at that, aren't they? They have a Mars bar called a Titan bar. San Pellegrino water is San Celestino. Dreams
German
instead of Milky Ways.
They've got very methodical minds, haven't they, the Germans? How does the letter of the law state that we shall do this? I see. We will name it thusly.
You get some classic lines, they make you smile. Obviously, somebody's job to think up like those titles is their alternative. So,
if you're not familiar, we're just talking about a supermarket that's like Walmart but smaller. German Aldi. Anyway.
They're destroying the Walmarts. They're destroying Asda in this country. They're undercutting the undercutters.
And they're doing, but they're not doing it by lack of quality. They're doing it with efficiency. They're doing it by being very German. I used to have a friend of mine used to be a manager at Aldi, and it's run on an absolute minimal staff. So when you walk around an Aldi, you would assume that there's 10 or 12 people running the place. It's normally 3 or 4 in a big, massive store, and they just do everything and are very efficient about how and when they're going to organise their day. And, you know, it's long hours, but very, very good pay. So they pay the staff well, keep them loyal. And at one stage, Aldi didn't even have proper tills with scanners. They do now, but for years, till very recently, every member of staff was expected in Aldi to know the price of everything in the store. Everything. Because they would process everything manually and charge cash only, or they then very recently allowed you to use a debit card. But for a very long time, you had a minimal amount of ways to pay. It's certainly not on a credit card, because that would cost them to process. So to bear back everything, they literally had the staff know the price of everything, and they would put it through literally on a calculator as you went through. It was nuts. They did that for years.
Wait a second. You're saying Aldi's by you, it's like Walmart?
Like a supermarket with, like a Walmart. Imagine a supermarket, just a supermarket with all the different products. Well, yes, they have fairly limited lines, but they've got everything you could do on a grocery shop. It's just a grocery store. My point is that if you imagine memorizing the price of everything in your local Walmart, that's what Aldi staff did, so that they didn't have to invest in any technology in that regard. They could keep it much more efficient and slick with minimal staff, with them just knowing the price of everything in the store. As incredible as it sounds, that's exactly what they did. An item would go past them, and they would know how much it cost and put it into a calculator right in front of you. It was a bit more advanced than that. It was a proper till, but you know what I mean? It was basically just a calculator. It wasn't scanning it going bip and then a computer knowing how much it cost. They knew by heart how much every item cost. This is a flat earth debate. We're talking about the intricacies of a small, it's not even that small anymore, Aldi's quite big, but a German supermarket chain that just runs in such a manner that their quality is the same as every other supermarket, but their prices are stupidly cheap, and their branding is a bit off-brand. So it looks like it should be cheap, but it tastes like everything else, right? But just by doing things in a very German, efficient way.
Why do you expect it to be off topic? We started with a vacuum.
Yeah, and why did they, if you said it's a smaller type of Walmart, why'd they call it Aldi's and not Smallmart?
I don't know what Aldi would mean in a German dialect, so I don't know what that word means.
Anyway, get a Trader Joe's by you. They're better.
Hello, whoever it was that saved us from this discussion. Whoever said mic check. Yes, we heard.
Well, Nathan, what I wanted to highlight real quick for you was, aren't you kind of talking about the idea of being dependent on technology and people becoming dumber because of it?
Maybe he had to be of a certain education standard. From what I understood, when this is going back a while, that this manager was telling me about the education status as people in Aldi. They were educated. They weren't dumbos that they'd employ. So I don't know if that's the correlation you're drawing. I wasn't. You can. Feel free.
Yeah, because
Nathan, you're
just real quick, Solar. Sorry, I feel like people have this idea that technology is all good and like helping us, and it does a lot of good things. But like you're saying, there are things that it's making us more lazy at, and it's actually reversing our progress as human beings. I feel, and we're paying more attention to the technology than human beings.
Right. Somebody somewhere in Germany has gone, it will be more efficient to employ more intelligent people for more money than invest in a computerized system to scan in every item of stock or scan in a box at a quantity and then have it go through a till at the end and then process it that way. It will be cheaper, quicker, and essentially more efficient, like the Germans like to be, to do it with the staff just knowing everything. That relies on good staff and intelligent staff, and it made them more money by doing it that way, rather than relying on lower quality, more or less intelligent staff and a highly sophisticated computer system. But different.
Just one more
folks,
thing.
different
I just
strokes.
correlate it to the. Oh, sorry, am I stepping on you there?
No, I just said different strokes for different folks. It's just that's some people do it one way, some people do it another.
Absolutely. I just want to point out, because we're always told that like these people have all these high technology things, that's why we make all these advancements and stuff, but we have pretty practical examples where technology isn't helping us as much as we think. Go ahead, Solar.
No, I was just going to make a joke about your mountain drink, that it should be mountain spew, as in spewing garbage.
That's what we get for certain. Mountain spew.
That technology thing is always funny for me because at my job, obviously everyone knows I'm a flatty, and we sit in meetings sometimes, right, where we have like these big meetings that span across like different satellite locations for my job, right? So we sit there and the Wi-Fi is horrible, and I always sit and laugh because we're a multi-million dollar company as of right now, and the Wi-Fi, we can't even get Wi-Fi that works. The shit's breaking up. It's all crap. And I sit there in the meeting and I always say really, really loud, like, so in 69, supposedly people walked around on the moon. But today in 2021, can't get Wi-Fi to work in this building. How's that technology going, guys? They all look at me like, this guy's starting again. I love it. It's insanity. People think that stuff actually happened, but then you can't get a signal, a clear signal in 2021, and that's okay.
What's the
Nixon can talk to people
a phone call
with
to
a
the
phone.
moon.
Oh, Addy's already got me. Adam's beating me to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Nixon on the landline.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insanity, man. That's cool. That worked out beautifully.
What did he say to them on the phone? I am not a crook.
No, that was later.
No, he talked about how easily the call was made because of the lack of atmosphere between them and the astronauts. So I'm sure that's what they talked about.
By the relay in Australia.
Of course, yes.
Sure, yeah.
Marvellous. Meanwhile, Wi-Fi don't work in Chocolate's multi-million-pound company. I mean, what the hell are they doing? Do they not realise you're trying to debate the nature of Earth on a completely unrelated show on your phone while you're working? What is their problem?
I don't know. They need to get their shit together.
Dude, I'm going to write a letter. They'll probably get you fired. I'm not going to write a letter. I'm joking. Any single...
I remember one of the...
Go on.
I was going to say one of the things that used to get me to doubt it was, how are you transmitting something that far when you'd need a powerhouse to put that kind of, power into a signal. But, that's really what they want you to do is question, something unrelated to, the problem. Like, how's the signal reaching that far?
Exactly.
Instead of whether that place actually exists.
You've got it.
Yeah, smack that beat.
Exactly. So
listen.
It's hold on, just one sec. It's rockets. How do they work in a vacuum when they've got nothing to push on? It's how do three 1960s car batteries transmit a signal that's remote control from Earth by way of a moon buggy and its camera that's remote operated to the moon with those three batteries. Let's argue about how that's possible so that they can spin out the explanation for no. By the third time they did it, the guy who's operating the camera that's attached to the moon buggy that's powered by 1960s batteries that have been driving around the moon surface for quite some time, he just figured out that based on the delay time that he'd have to move his stick to move the camera to film the takeoff with the little bit of wire that's pulling it off the ground. Ignore that bit, I didn't say that. He just has to do it early. And, eventually he got the hang of it and they got the perfect shot of it taking off the moon and nobody got hurt, nobody died. And, the batteries were perfectly sufficient to transmit that to the relay in Australia and then back to us for us to have the glorious footage. And that's how it was done. I mean, what's the problem? Missing the fact that you can't have gas pressure without a container. If they left Earth and it's claimed to be sphere-shaped air, atmosphere, they'd be entering an area of low pressure claimed to be 10 to the minus 17 torr. And that would be an area of volume that the gas we're breathing would fill. So they definitely didn't take this journey because they'd have to traverse a second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum, that is definitely not real. Let's not worry about how they transmitted back after arriving in a place that they're claiming is a rock in this sky vacuum, because that journey definitely didn't take place. Therefore, the transmission is irrelevant.
On the share screen, there's the phone.
Before you do, or as you do, I was going to say, not only does the Wi-Fi not work, but if they even try to get rid of chocolate, nothing would work because everything works well with chocolate.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Look, we'll move on.
That also happens when Neil
hold on,
deGrasse
everyone,
Tyson
calm down.
smacks the beach ball.
Right. So what we're talking about, just so we stay on subject, is, how good a quality of walkie-talkie do you need to transmit back through the wardrobe, and how long would the Duracell batteries work in the walkie-talkie on Narnia side of the wardrobe if there's a time dilation? So let's argue about the time dilation and the battery longevity in the walkie-talkies when transmitting through the wardrobe back to somebody who's not in Narnia. Not realising that Narnia isn't real, and the battery life when transmitting through walkie-talkies through the wardrobe isn't really that relevant. It's just a segue to make sure we're all begging the question that Narnia is real. In this case, we're all begging the question that space is real. There's a sky vacuum, and that entropy law that's being violated is nothing to worry about. We'll concern ourselves with 1960s battery technology, or whether or not rocket technology can work in this fake place that doesn't exist. Over to you, Adam.
Well, that kind of sums it up. But if you want just to ease you any cognitive dissonance, pain you're suffering, they summarise it here for a simple thing for you to accept. Look, so mission to the moon. Listen, as Apollo 11 crew now isolated from everyone except Nixon, and the way they describe this mastery of human achievement is in such detail is simply the call went from the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. to Houston, where it was routed into space via mission control through the capsule communicator.
Oh, no, Australian relay not needed. Okay, my bad.
They might have had it in there and just changed the story. Who knows? They do it all the time.
Wasn't the relay for the pictures?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's why on the dish film you've got the picture of the sheep standing on television screens, because that's where they're getting the movie pictures from. The second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum, obviously filmed on a set a long time previous to the transmission, then presented at NASA by way of a video feed to a monitor with a camera pointed at the monitor and then transmitted to a projection screen onto a wall for the press to film to then transmit to the public. That was how the video footage was presented. That's
Yeah,
why
I
it
can't
looks
get
like
cell
it's...
phone service right outside my front door.
That's why what you see on screen now on the right-hand side, that is why this is so crap. Because the stage show that they did when they created this fake footage was then, as I say, put onto tape, played through a video monitor, filmed by a camera, sent down a wire to a projection screen, projected onto a wall, and then filmed by cameras that then gave you this image via your TV screen. That's why it looks like this.
Just sad.
Well, yeah, like if you look at it as in what it proves, right? Say NASA comes out and admits that they faked everything. How does that prove that we're not on a sphere? You know, how does it? It wouldn't prove anything. It would just prove that they're liars.
Blue marble. No. Some of the fundamental premises of being on a sphere were confirmed by these journeys into the sky vacuum. Why were they needed? You know, check out the clues, man. Mark Sargent, man. They needed a picture of Earth, a full ball from space. That's what this got them. That's the main purpose of these missions. They're travelling to the moon, but what they really need is a picture of Earth from space as a whole sphere. Because up until this point, they don't have that.
No, I think it is
how would that
pretty
prove?
sad.
It proves it would prove for a heliocentrist that Earth's a sphere, because apparently they've then got a photograph of it that happens to match quite nicely Michael Collins' pictorial paintings of the exact same thing. Yeah, just by happy coincidence, he happens to be a really good artist that likes drawing pictures of Earth as a sphere. I mean, it's just a coincidence and all that. But there we go. That's what they hadn't got, other than in artist's form, until they did this. So what does it prove? Well, it's a picture of Earth from space. What does that prove if you don't believe Earth's a ball? Well, here's a picture of it from space.
Right? They can claim it as a proof, but if all of that is debunked, it's just no longer a proof. How does it prove that it's not a sphere then?
How does it debunk Earth? Well, you can only take the claim at its face value. The claim of Earth having photographs of it from space is debunked. Ergo, there are no pictures of Earth from space to prove it's a ball. How does that disprove it being a ball full stop? Well, you can't carte blanche apply their leap in logic when presented with propaganda that people have travelled through a second law of thermodynamics violation to play golf on a claim to be rock in that sky vacuum and send transmissions and phone calls back and forth between this second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum that doesn't exist. You know, and whether or not that non-existence debunks the entirety of heliocentrism. I don't see how I can go from one to the other. I can just debunk the claim, which is that they went to the moon. They didn't transmit back from it. They didn't get pictures of Earth from space because there is no space. The sky vacuum's bunk. But does that debunk Earth as a sphere as a whole? Well, I don't know. Maybe. If that's all you hold as proof.
No. I wasn't saying the part about space, because the part about space is necessary for the sphere as logical implication. But just because NASA's a bunch of liars, you know, like someone could make that logical step to say just because they're a bunch of liars doesn't mean that it's not, you know.
No, and likewise, you can apply the same logic to the moon landing itself. I think Joe Rogan, as we've been talking about in this show, did exactly the same thing. You know, you go into, well, they didn't and couldn't tell us about the secret moon missions that were from behind the moon and how they found this, that, and the other, because obviously that would scare the public. So you just invent a whole new story that might have been told to you by somebody who's speculated these things or has been put out as a false narrative, so that you can still have the same story, but justify why they'd have to lie, whilst maintaining the exact same story about how they've travelled to a rock in the sky vacuum. They just didn't show us what they really did. You know? Well, likewise, well, they didn't really get a picture of Earth from space because of the Van Allen radiation belts. All right, okay, so they had to fake it because they couldn't get past this difficult place that we're now told we can't get through. Just ignore the fact that the place they're travelling to and claim to have been and now can't get to because of Van Allen belts that weren't an issue back then is a sky vacuum that doesn't exist and violates natural law. Again, better to be arguing about whether or not Van Allen belts were going to cause a problem for them travelling to space than pointing out that space isn't real. Let's argue about whether
Exactly.
Van Allen belts got in the way of the original journey to the moon, right?
Exactly.
All this time, I thought Van Allen Belts was an opera singer.
Pavarotti.
But
But yeah,
how
like,
comes they didn't
if
get
they
any
can-
pictures of them on the moon from the Earth? You know, vice versa. Oh, man can see Earth from the moon. Well, why can't we see man on the moon from Earth?
Because the moon's not a rock in a sky vacuum. Not as they've presented. I mean, it might be, but it's certainly not in the form and methodology and type that they've claimed to travel to it in. And really, that's all that matters. Their claims of it being a rock in a sky vacuum capable of being landed on to get pictures of Earth from space is all bunk, because if the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. And with that, I'll say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link below this video, help me out with all my horrendous bills, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!